Today, we are going to be talking about the one, the only, The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, Mr. Grimdark Daddy himself. All right, so before we get into this review, we are going to break this review up into two parts as we usually do. We're going to do a spoiler-free section, and then we'll do a spoiler-filled section where I'll just talk about, in-depth details of my thoughts and feelings on the book. And since this is a series, I'm also going to talk about some of my theories, where I think the story is going to go, and just general questions that I have, because this book definitely left me having questions after I finished it. So you may be asking yourself, why should you listen to me about this? Well, for your information, I am a certified reviewer. Check out my license. And so if that isn't enough proof for you, I don't know what else to tell you. All right, so let's jump into the spoiler-free section. What is this book about? What is The Blade itself about? Well, The Blade itself, I can't tell you what The Blade itself is about. Okay, so The Blade itself is a book that follows three main characters, three main POVs. We have Logan Ninefingers, who is a retired soldier, retired warrior, more likely than soldier, retired warrior who was trying to move away from his, past. So The Blade itself is about So The Blade itself is about three main characters. We get three main POVs in this book. And our first main POV that we follow is Logan Ninefingers. He is a retired warrior who, has done a lot of bad things in his past. He has done a lot. So much that he doesn't even like to talk about it. But he's done a lot in his past, and he's trying to leave his past behind and, just look to a better tomorrow, look to a brighter tomorrow, in a way. And then we also follow the Inquisitor Glokta. Glokta is a retired hero Glokta is, I want to say it all at one time. Okay, so you may be asking yourself, what is this book about? Well, The Blade itself is about three main characters. We get three main POVs in this book. And as for what the plot is, I'm still trying to figure that out. But our main POVs make up what the story is. It's our main driver for this story. This story is a character-focused book. And so our first POV that we get is Logan Ninefingers. He's a retired warrior who is trying to leave his past behind. He's trying to not forget who he was, but just trying to leave all the things that he's done in the past. He's done some really, really horrible, really awful things in his past. And he's trying to, change his life, I guess you can say, become a different person from who he used to be. And then we get the Inquisitor Glokta. Glokta is a war hero who has become crippled now from the events of the war. And so we follow Glokta as the Inquisitor in the main city, and he is basically looking into a bunch of stuff that's going on in the city. Yeah, Glokta is a character who went through a lot in the war, and the war has left him, basically needing a cane to get around everywhere, and he has this horrible pain that he can't get rid of. And then we also follow Giselle Luthar, I believe his name is. And he is, just a vain dude who doesn't really care about anybody else except for himself. He's vain. He, thinks he looks good. He's self-absorbed, and we get to follow him as he trains for a pretty important competition that, he doesn't really want to do. So I find myself asking, why was he doing this? Now, all that is basically, all that is basically what the story is, how these three characters' story progresses as we're reading the book. So you may ask yourself, why would you read this? Why would you read this book? Because that doesn't sound like a lot. We just get to, be with these three characters as their story progresses. Well, first of all, do I recommend you read this book? I do. And I recommend you read this book because the characters are great in this book. These characters are really well fleshed out characters, and we get to see the world from their eyes in a way that is just so real for the setting that they're in. And this book is also called, well, I've been told this book is Grimdark. And while this book is, I guess, is Grimdark-esque, this book isn't as, dark as I thought it was going to be. This book is, in fact, has a lot of funny moments that I wasn't expecting. But the Grimdark aspect comes in where you can't really try to idealize a character, believing that there's a character that we're seeing in this book who is seen as the hero. Nobody in this book is a hero. Everybody in this book has done, is doing, or will do horrible shit to somebody else. And I think just the setting, this Grimdark setting that these characters are in, and the way that these characters are so three-dimensional and fleshed out, leads to a really interesting story. And like I said earlier, what is the plot of this book? I'm still trying to figure that out. The plot is something, but that I think the plot is kind of has to be saved for the spoiler section, because we don't really get to know what the actual plot is in this book. But I have inklings of what it is, and I can't tell you without spoiling it for you. The world in this book the world in the Blade itself is interesting. It has magic. It is obviously fantasy, but it's very low magic. But the magic isn't the main focus of the book here. The main focus of the book, like I said, is the characters. This book is a character-driven story. But overall, what would I rate this book? I would give this book a 4 stars out of 5. This book is a really good book. I think this book does a lot well with the characters that it gives you, and the story that it gives you is really interesting, and just how real the characters are, and how real the story is. Where it kind of, lost me was the plot that wasn't the plot, but there is a plot. I just think there was something that could have been done more with the characters, and I'm expecting to see that with the later books in the First Law trilogy. So that's where we are with this book. Now, if you haven't watched or if you haven't read The Blade itself, we're going to get into spoiler territory for everything in this book. Feel free to watch on if you are spoiler risky. If you're spoiler risque, as they say. So, characters being the strongest thing in this book, let's start off with characters. To me, Glokta had the best introduction for anybody in this book. The book starts off with Logan, right? Logan is being attacked by the Shankas, and then he, has this whole fight and he's running away. I just thought Glokta's introduction was, the way that it was done was so interesting, because his greatest battle was a flight of stairs because of his disability. It was also interesting. It was interesting because he has the most internal dialogue out of anybody in this book. So at one point where it looks like he's kissing, his superior's ass, he's also shit talking him in his head. When we're looking at when we're reading from other characters' perspectives in this book, I don't think anybody else had like an internal dialogue like that. Glokta was always shit talking everybody else when it was his POV, which I found hilarious, and also took me a little bit getting used to, because I didn't know if it was like something else that was trying to be said, because it was happening so often. He kind of gives off that energy of the old man who, the guy that feels so sorry for himself, and just is like bah humbug, curmudgeon, hates everything and everybody, and will curse you out. I'm gonna go to now my least favorite character, Giselle. I didn't really care for Giselle. I thought he was so annoying. I think this is something that slowed me down in the book because he has, he's one of our main POVs, but Giselle, just like being inside of his head and like looking at his thoughts was so annoying. And sometimes I thought that he was gonna like actually have some morals or have some like kind of, integrity. That shit never happened. He just kept on being his same old self, which turned out in the end was like, better than the West. I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought the parallels between Giselle and Wes was like how Abercrombie sets the two characters up was pretty interesting, because in the beginning, Giselle, like I'm saying, I didn't like reading from his POV because it was bad. I just didn't like reading from his POV because I didn't like his character. And so when I see him, I could really care less about like what he's saying, because not care less, but I could care less about what Giselle is saying, because at the end of the day, to me, he's just, inflating his own ego and talking shit about everybody else around him. And then when we, get his perspective on, it was like Major West, I think. When we get his perspective on Wes, Wes is always, given a bunch of these like accolades, and they give him all this praise for being, this really well up and comer from the peasant class or wherever like social standing he's from. And they talk about how he's such a great guy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, all right, I like this guy. He seems like he has some kind of integrity. And then we get to the scene where he beats on his sister. I was like, what is going on? At first, I was saying to myself, I think that's when I realized, like, everybody in this book is probably shit. Abercrombie sets up West as to be this character who, seems to have all the right ideals as an upstanding dude. And then he goes and beats on his sister. And that just tells me, like, nobody in this book is a good person, in all honesty. Okay? And shaking my damn head when I read that scene. I was so taken aback. I was like, what is going on? What are you doing? So we get that scene, and then his sister, after he's fucking beat on her, his sister, gives him a jab like, yeah, Giselle is, vain, vapid, whatever, self-absorbent, but at least I know he would never hit on me. And I'm like, damn. God damn. She got you there. And I really, did it change my opinion of him? No. But it let me see him in a different light, which I thought was pretty good. All right, so let's talk about my favorite character, the one and only Logan Nine Fingers. Okay, and this is another person that threw me for a loop, and I have questions on the end because what was that? But the character that I thought we were getting with Logan was the retired badass. Okay, this retired, warrior who has, done so much shit in his past that he wants to, change his ways, basically become a different person from who he was in his past. I thought that's the character we're getting. And then he has to, because of, people won't stop coming for him, because he won't stop running into people that want to kill him. He constantly has to reach down inside of him and, kill people that he would honestly just not want to kill. He just wants to go his own way and live his life. That's what I thought we were getting, and that's what we were getting for a second there, in the beginning of the not beginning, like the beginning, the middle, end of the book. That's why that's what we were getting with Logan. Okay, and I was loving it. I was like, yeah, okay. They come for him. He don't want to kill them. He realizes how fragile life is now because of everything that he did in his past, and he just, that's why I always thought when he's like, he would repeat to himself, I'm still alive. I'm still alive. I just thought that was him, just talking about reflecting on how he's, able to make it out, able to keep his life. Nah, that's what we got. And then we got a little bit more when the Bloody Nine came out to play. Okay. When that scene came, I was like, at first, I still don't understand what happened there. Did Abercrombie write that in that way because, because Logan, there's like an actual like exchange between Logan himself and the Bloody Nine? Or did Abercrombie write that scene in a way where the Bloody Nine comes out? Did he write it like that so to like just emphasize Logan really switching off and becoming the Bloody, like, him consciously doing it instead of him subconsciously, unconsciously becoming the Bloody Nine? I think that's what I'm trying to figure out after reading that scene, because at the end of the scene, he's after the Bloody Nine is asking for more people to come in so he can kill them. So this is the scene. The room spun around him, swam around him, laughing. How's that? Fuck. He stumbled, blinked sleepily, campfire guttering. No, not yet. He dropped to his knees. Not yet. There was more to do, always more. Not yet, he snarled, but his time was up. Logan screamed. He fell down, pain everywhere. Like, why that switch where the Bloody Nine, but the Bloody Nine is saying not yet. Like he doesn't want to go. Why switch? Why write a switch like that? So I got questions. For you, Abercrombie. As we're with Logan for most of the book, I really see him trying to change his ways, trying to be a different person, especially with that moment where he saves Quay, Malachus, I believe his name is. I really thought he was going to leave him there to die, basically. But no, he throws his pot away that he keeps on talking about, like it's one of his treasured possessions, and he, sacrifices that so that he can save Malachus, which was pretty endearing to me. Now, the character I have the most questions about, and I'm pretty sure everybody has questions about this guy, is Bayaz. The man is just controlling everything. To me, it seems like. The spirits tell Logan that he has to go to meet the wizard that's like calling on him, that's looking for him. We get there, we don't really know what Bayaz wants Logan to do. We just know Bayaz like wants Logan around. The same way that he wants Giselle around, that he wants Giselle around and he forces Giselle to come on this journey with them. The same way that he probably, I can't remember, but I think influenced Glokta being sent over to the new location where he's going to be the head inquisitor or whatever. Bayaz always, I think he knows what he wants to do. And this is why I say the book has a plot, but there's no plot. Because to me, we get a lot of B plots with Logan, Glokta, Giselle, and all that. But Bayaz knows what the real plot is. He knows what the end goal is. Going to the house of the maker, picking up some strange box, more questions. Does he offer any answers? No, none. Even to Logan, his travel companion, none. Even to his apprentice, I don't know. Maybe he did, but not to our eyes. So I'm just wondering, like, okay, what is this guy? What is he really trying to do? What is his actual motives? Because, yeah, I assume that Logan going to find the wizard would be a good thing, and that, you know, Bayaz has an idea of what to do about something, I guess, something like in the world, which still don't know. But Bayaz just seems more sketchy and shifty as I'm reading on, and that's funny because I love Bayaz. He has one of my favorite, or every scene with him, fucking hilarious. The man has comedic timing like nobody else in this book. But he's telling nobody what his plans are. You know, he had that conversation with Yue, I forget his name. And that, I can't remember, but I don't think that told me a lot about what's going on. And I think I trust the Yue dude. I trust him more than I trust Bayaz, because he seems actually compassionate. Yeah, when he meets Pharaoh, and she's burying her dead, the dead soldiers that she was with, and he, you know, shows her real compassion, just shows her real love, especially in the scenes where she got attacked by those, I think they were eaters that they called them, the people that, that's another, okay, I'm gonna leave that for the world. He shows her real compassion, and, you know, hears her out when she is expressing, you know, these struggles, or just like hardships that she's thinking about. Shows her real compassion. Bayaz knows Logan is trying to, you know, leave the fighting behind, leave all the death and killing, the Bloody Nine, trying to leave that behind. But for some reason, he brings Logan along to continue the killing that he's been asking him to do. And he doesn't say that outright, but I feel like that's what he expects of Logan, you know? So I don't know. I got my eyes on Bayaz. The world, great world. I just have more questions, and I figure they're going to be answered out in the book. So I'm going to use world as like, this section where we'll talk about world and world building and all that is all my theories. House of the Maker. What's going on there? The House of the Maker just threw a bunch of questions in my head. Why is it built like that? What's the box? What's the weapon? Is the weapon in there, the blade itself? Okay, first of all, what's the first law? That's what I really want to know. Malekith mentions the first law when he's passed out on Logan's back, right? The first law. And then Logan says what? Quay's face. And then Quay just says, it's forbidden to touch the other side. To speak with the devils, the creatures of the world below are made of lies. You mustn't do it. Is that the first law? To not touch the other side? And does that mean the spirits that Logan is talking to? So Logan has broken the first law, or is this something else? Because the blade that was in the Tower of the Maker, the weapon that was in there, they said had, you know, two edges, one in this realm and one in the other side. What's the other side? That's the real question. Pharaoh, I'm trying to understand Pharaoh. Why is her just whole, I'm trying to understand why Bayaz was so interested in why she was colorblind, and why doesn't she feel any pain? What does that have to do with Bayaz's plans? See, it all comes back to Bayaz, because he's not giving us enough fucking information. I'm trying to figure it out, but I don't have the pieces. Obviously, the world was great because I want to get answers to these questions that I'm asking right now. I want to figure out more about what's going on with all those things. And then let's go to prose. The prose in this book was good. I'm telling you guys, I'm trying to become better at noticing good prose. I'm trying to become better at picking out and being able to, you know, identify what good prose is and what bad prose is. Because I've seen good prose. It's just sometimes I don't notice good prose. Or I've seen great prose. I notice when it's great prose. But sometimes I don't notice prose that is really good. It just kind of like, I kind of just pass it by and I have to do a double take. So I went through, found some quotes that I really liked. Okay. This is probably the best quote in the book. The best passage in the book. Has it ever occurred to you, Master Nine Fingers, that a sword is different from other weapons? Axes and maces and so forth are lethal enough, but they hang on the belt like dumb brutes. He ran an eye over the hilt. Plain cold metal, scored with faint grooves for a good grip, glinting in the torchlight. But a sword has a voice. Huh? Sheath, it has little to say, to be sure, but you need only put your hand on the hilt, and it begins to whisper in your enemy's ear. He wrapped his fingers tightly around the grip. A gentle warning, a word of caution. Do you hear it? Logan nodded slowly. Now, murmured Bayaz, compare it to the sword half drawn. A foot length of metal hissed out the sheath, a single silver letter shining near the hilt. The blade itself was dull, but its edge had a cold and frosty glint. It speaks louder, does it not? It hisses a dire threat. It makes a deadly promise. Do you hear it? Logan nodded again, his eyes fastened on the glittering edge. Now compare it to the sword full drawn. Bayaz whipped the long blade from its sheath with a faint ringing sound, brought it up so the point hovered inches from Logan's face. It shouts now, does it not? It screams defiance. It bellows a challenge. Do you hear it? Mm-hmm, said Logan, leaning back and staring slightly cross-eyed at the shining point of the sword. Yeah, I really like the prose in this book. I think I'm starting to like prose where it's really able to capture my attention and really able to evoke a feeling out of me. And I feel like a lot throughout this book, especially with this scene, is a feeling of mystery. Like there's mystery in the air as Bayaz is talking about how a sword can speak, but also there's tension as well, really, in this scene too, as he's, going through the stages of pulling out a sword and showing how it can, say a lot to your enemy. But the feeling of mysticism and just like this eerie feeling of there's suspense in the air is something I felt a lot throughout this book as I was reading it. There were scenes where Pharaoh was, when Pharaoh was traveling, I got this sense of, when Abercrombie is writing, I feel like there's something being hinted at that I can't really piece together. So if you're still here, you obviously either have read The Blade itself or you want to read it. And if you haven't read it, please pick up this book because it's a pretty good book. Make sure you guys subscribe so you can see when I read Before They Are Hanged, the next book in the First Law trilogy. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.